Hey everybody, and welcome everybody, actually, I should say, to this beautiful Saturday morning. I hope everybody is doing well. I know that we've gotten hit by storms, in many locations here in Texas and in other areas. Whatever situation you may be in, I hope that you guys are all doing well. That you guys are up this morning, enjoying some coffee, maybe enjoying some time with the family, starting some breakfast, whatever the case is. But I just personally and sincerely want to thank you for joining us this morning here on your show, My Ed Tech Life. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. I mean, I met AJ, a while back, and we just definitely hit it off. And just said, "Hey, man, like we definitely need to get you on the show." And I'm just so glad and happy that he was able to get on the show this weekend and join us because he's got a wonderful, wonderful story. He is a great guy, passionate educator, podcaster, educator, and everything. Oh, dad, everything else in between too as well. And you're definitely going to enjoy this conversation today. So thank you so much. And for those of you joining us today, please make sure you drop in, your link, your Twitter handle, drop in, let us know where you're joining from today. We'd love to hear that. Oh, we already see Mr. Nessie here. I see Mr. Tim Cavey, Stephanie, Mr. or Dr. Dan. Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for everybody on the Edu Podcast Network too, as well. So shout out to Mr. Nessie and all the wonderful shows there where you can catch Maya Tech Life, and you can catch this way Reflect Ed podcast that we'll talk a little bit about later on. So we're really excited. And all right, so AJ, let's go ahead and get started. Today we have a great conversation. I know in talking to you, we're thinking, okay, it's like, well, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to do, or anything? And I on this show, I have yet you're the first administrator that I get on this show. So I'm really excited about that because, as you know, we've been going through, this thing, since last year. And I've always wanted to get an administrative, lens, perspective and the way that they see things. And I was really motivated by your last podcast. All right. It was episode 9, right? That you talked about. I was just blown away, just how calm and cool and the things and your ideas that just rolled out. I was like, I got to get him on the show to share that. But I know that I've done a lot of talking. I'm highly caffeinated. But guys, let me introduce you to AJ. AJ, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
First of all, that was the introduction, starting with that video. I'm intimidated right now. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. That video of chill Fonz up against that wall, I love watching that every week, man. That is dope. But thank you for the kind welcome, the kind words. Fonz, great to be here, first and foremost. I love your show. We talk about this. Like, this is not like the first time meeting Fonz. We have talked so many times. We're texting, we're chilling, we're on the same page. So to introduce myself, my name is AJ Bianco. I am a first-year vice principal during this pandemic, and it is wonderful. I'll just say that. It's wonderful. It's my 16th year of education, so I've been throughout many different classrooms from grades 5 through 8. 14 years of that was all middle school, 1 year as a supervisor of instruction, and now, as I mentioned, vice principal. I'm also a father, as Fonz mentioned. Thank you. Shout out to my family if they're watching on Facebook. Probably not. My wife, I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and they are basically my everything. I wake up my weekends and I get started with them. You mentioned you are highly caffeinated. I am highly caffeinated as well. We are ready to go. And here we go. Cheers.
Cheers, my friend.
I got the matching logos.
Oh, there you go.
Didn't plan that at all. I really didn't. But thank you. So I appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk about everything else. So let's roll.
All right. So as you know, AJ, it's just been great, getting to know you and connecting. And of course, through all of these wonderful educators here, especially, Chris Nessie and Tim, and, we've got Dr. Dan here, and, running in that circle of podcasters, educators, and, just simply sharing our passion for education and things of that sort. And, getting to meet you, just going back and forth, like growing and learning and saying, hey, look, how about you try this? And how about you try that? And, learning from one another. And I think that that's something that's great. You build that community, those relationships, those connections. And like I like to call it, hashtag PLF, my personal learning family. And AJ, I am very thankful that you, and along with all of the guests that are watching, I want to give a shout out to Alex Rios, who's joining us here from Edinburgh, Texas, my hometown. So, Alex Rios, thank you so much for joining us. But being part of that, personal learning family is something that is very important. And I think it's even more important now, during this time, being able to reach out to people such as yourself, that we see things, pretty much through the same lens, but we still get to learn from one another. And I think that that's part of the experience, that learning of not just staying where you're at, but continuing to grow. And, it's just been a great journey. And talking about growth, like you mentioned, I think that during this time, and I know that it was something that you can kind of had, not, I don't want to say hidden for a while, but it was you were very low key about this until one day all of a sudden it's like, whoa, he's a vice principal. I was like, well, where did this come from? Because you had just kept it like real low key. And so I thought that was, pretty interesting too, as well. Just the fact that you're just very reserved and you just kind of kept that until you're like, all right, here's the time to share. But I want to hear that story, AJ. But first, before we do that, let's go back even earlier than that. And the reason I like to ask questions like this is because I know that when I grew up, I didn't want to be an educator or be in education, but I always love to hear people's stories of how they maybe, were guided or went down that path into education. So can you share a little bit of backstory, as far as why you wanted to pursue, a career in education?
Yeah. So education for me, that was the thing I wanted to do first and foremost. I was 12 years old and I was in summer camp, and I had the option. I could either be a camper or I can get paid to work. So I was like, you know what? Let me work. Like I need the money. I got some things going on. I want to save up for a car. I want to do these things. I want to play baseball. I want to travel, whatever. So I said, I'm gonna forego my last year as a camper, 12 years old, and I'm gonna work. So they put me in because I'm still young, they put me in a group of kids who were 5 years old. They were the second youngest group of campers at my camp. And at first I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do this. My friends were at camp. I was working. I was having a hard time trying to figure out what to do in this role. So somebody who I considered a mentor at that camp sat me down. He's like, look, you're a kid, you're a camper, but you're working. He's like, here's what we're going to do. And he kind of opened my eyes to what it was like to be a good counselor. So from that time, when he sat me down to the end of the summer, I absolutely fell in love with these kids. These 5-year-olds were awesome. I had fun with them, but I was working. So from that point on, for those, let's say 6 weeks out of the 8 weeks of the summer, my mind was like, I want to be a teacher one day. And I went home and told my parents, like, that's it. From right now, I'm going to plan to be a teacher. So my parents were like, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. You had it in you. I was like, how did you know that? Like, well, all the coaching that you've done and then this you've done with little kids, we knew that was something you were going to focus on. So I was like, cool. So I, grow up, I started doing anything I could to keep in the education field, whether it was coaching or whether it was working with kids in my high school. I started looking at that and I was like, I'm going to be an elementary teacher. So fast forward now, college, I do the observations for elementary education. I go to the first school. It's actually across the street from my sister's school. She's teacher as well. So she was a high school teacher. The elementary school was across the street. She puts me in this classroom. She hooked it up. A kid comes up to me like, can you tie my shoe? I'm like, yeah, cool. Tie your shoe. Not a problem. Next kid comes up. No joke. Booger on their finger. Can you wipe this for me? I was like, no. I'm not doing that. So as a 19-year-old, I went back across the street to my sister. I said, I am not going to be an elementary teacher. She's like, fine, let me show you what high school looks like. So she hooked me up. Her school was a high school, middle school. And I started bouncing around different social studies classrooms. And I found my passion for social studies. And I went back to college the next day, changed my major from elementary to secondary education. And here we are.
Wow, that is so neat. I mean, just like that experience, the what you went through, and the way that you found your passion. And I know for some of us, I mean, for myself, I didn't find my passion till later on. But it's just always interesting just to hear and see things through people's lenses and perspectives, because kind of helps you see where they're coming from. Because I know my views on education may be very different than your views due to our experiences. But man, that really kind of explains a lot of now in me getting to know you, why maybe you are the way that you are, in a good way, in an awesome way, because I think you're one of the coolest cats that I've ever met. And just because you're just very quiet, very reserved, but you're one of those people that I always say, they may be quiet, but when they talk, you definitely need to listen. And I find that every time that I listen to one of your shows, I'm like, dude, like this guy's got like it's in there. It's definitely like ingrained, and I think it's just like you said, just the passion that you have and your experience and the fact that you never stop learning. So tell me a little bit about that now, as far as you found your passion, you went into teaching. What at first, what were some of the things that you're like, oh man, like I wish somebody would have told me this before I started? What were some of those moments, and maybe how you kind of overcame those moments and grew from them?
So I think when I first started teaching, I actually got a job where I was student teaching, which was my old elementary school when I was a kid. So going through all that, like I taught my students as I was taught. So it was a lot of textbook, a lot of memorization, a lot of lecture. I wish the person I am now, I wish I knew back then how to really teach, because I didn't know what I was doing. My lessons were boring. My kids were not engaged. Yeah, we had a little fun every now and then because I could bring some fun into the classroom. But fast forward, 15 years later from my first year of teaching, I would seriously go back to myself and lecture myself as to, this is not how you teach. So I wish I had people now. I wish these people in my life now were the people I had back then, because you talk about PLF, and I totally agree with that. I love that, because when I got on Twitter in 2009, I was 5 years or so into my teaching career, and I was miserable. I expected so much more of myself, so much more of the profession, that I just did not like the direction I was going. So I joined Twitter. I started finding people who I considered great educators, and we shared ideas. I started doing these Twitter chats, and I absolutely loved learning from these people. So I started bringing these ideas to my classroom, and I started to figure out, this is what teaching should look like. But unfortunately, I wasn't in a right situation where I could do the things I wanted to do. We didn't have the technology at the school I was at. We didn't have the support that we should have now. I'm not bad mouthing anybody. It's just the way things were. Everything was very much state testing where I was and getting kids ready for the test. And I just couldn't find the time to get kids in New York ready for a Regents exam and have some fun. So now I feel like I have morphed into a different educator, because I know what education looks like. And I feel like I want to treat my teachers, and I want them to learn so that they're not doing what I was doing 15 years ago, especially new teachers. So when I look at the people around me, these people, everybody, we'll talk about Nessie, Dan Krynas, Tim Cavey. Yeah, you guys have boosted me up and really got me going into like this podcast world where I can share my voice, and I appreciate the kind words you had. But then there's so many other people out there who, my mentors now that I look at, who are leaders. Like, I never wanted to be a principal. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the classroom. I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to do all those kind of things. And I was going to be happy, I'm going to say it, having summers off. I know it's not, look, I'm a passionate educator. That's not why I got into this field, but I don't have summers off now. So that's why I'm saying this. I wanted to just be me in a classroom, learning from so many different people, and so many people in Bergen County, New Jersey. I've been able to kind of just spread my wings a little bit and see, like, I actually have like this leadership in me, and I've always had it. And maybe principalship was the way for me to go. So 5 years ago, when I started looking at like my master's program and looking at jobs to become a principal, I started getting a different passion, passion to raise educators up that can help students. I get 100 students a year as a teacher. Now, as an administrator, I get my students for my entire school. We have 600 kids. I have 80 teachers. So I feel like I'm going to make an impact there.
And I think that that's something, like you said, what your story just really resonates with me too as well. Because like you said, it's I never thought that I would be in the position. Or actually, I shouldn't say I never thought I never planned. I never, you know, because I was like you, like, you know what? I love the classroom. Reason being is because I had fun in my classroom. I mean, I loved being with the kids, doing all these amazing activities, using all the tech, doing all of that. And I never thought that I would be in a position where I'm at today because I was like, dude, like summer's off and everything. And now it's like 226 days on, 2 weeks off of summer, and you may think to yourself, it's like, whoa. I was like, my summer goes by so quick, and it's full of the honeydew list because it's the only time that I have to, like, hey, all right, let's make sure that we do and plan everything and squeeze everything in into these 2 weeks. But then, I remember the words of one of my assistant principals that I worked for in the last school that I was in. And I kind of her and I, it was a very interesting relationship because in my classroom we would use scratch coding and makey kits, and so the kids were doing and producing things on solar systems, creating programming. And I remember one time she walked in and she's just looking around and she sees kind of like the kids are they're just laughing, they're all having fun, and she sees like maybe she just didn't understand what was happening. I said, oh, look, they're coding, they're doing this. I think like within 5 minutes, my principal comes in. It's like, hey, I need to talk to you. It's like, well, they came and told me that all your kids are doing are just playing games. Like, are you teaching? I was like, yeah. I was like, come in and check this out. And so they're walking around and everything. And my principal's like, oh, okay. That whole year, that one administrator, I would always see that she was peeking in my window because the students were like active and so on. And then once she saw the test scores, it was kind of like, you own it, keep doing what you're doing. And then she's the one that said, hey, have you ever considered maybe, moving on up, and what you're doing is sharing it with other people. And I think, like you said, like I was like, okay. And once I was able to land in the position, just like kind of like you're saying, it's kind of like, wow, like the impact that one can have that you never really think how you just but one person with those ideas and searching and connecting with PLFs, then you're like, wow, like look at this, you're taking it to another level. And I think that really excites me just to hear other educators like yourself and maybe educators that are watching that, hey, not everybody thought that they were going to be where they're going to be because everybody's like, hey, I want my summers off, I want to do this. But now those people are the ones that are in leadership, such as yourself. And I think that's inspiring. It really is, because of the impact that you now have on all 600 plus students that you will have. So that's awesome, AJ. I commend you for that. And I'm really glad because they really definitely have an awesome vice principal now. And I know soon you'll probably be running your own school, and that'll be awesome, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We'll go slow with that part. I'm really happy where I am, working with some great people. So we'll start the change there, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and like you said, the change starts just one step at a time, and you're gonna get your feet wet. You're learning and that process. But again, the combination of your leadership that you have that is really great, because I know you speak very highly of them. What you're learning, what you're going through, and trying and working, together as a team, and so that learning experience plus whatever else the PLF can also share with you, and through that, I mean, it only makes you, and it can only make one just a better educator and more passionate about what we do. And it really just continues, fanning that flame, fanning that flame. So that's awesome, man. So now, going back to what you're saying as far as transitioning from classroom to administrator, and in the times that we're living in now, remote learning and mixed models, high flex, and you've got all sorts of education jargon that is out there. We'll just keep it plain and simple. In this time of pandemic, how has that transition been for you? what have you seen? Maybe some of the things that you're like, yikes, I didn't know maybe it was this bad, but maybe some of the upside of it. You've got the sweet and the sour. What are some of those notes there? Some sour and sweet notes that you've seen.
So, you spoke about my podcast before. So episode 9, I kind of just reflected on the fact that this is hard for everybody. Like, it's hard for teachers, it's hard for administrators. There's no off button. I feel like the teaching and the learning and all the things that are happening in a school day just doesn't end. We have people who are remote, who are teaching sometimes from their bedroom. So they're in their bedroom from 9 o'clock in the morning until midnight and beyond. So I know that teaching right now is incredibly hard. My wife is an educator, so I watch what she's doing. I see the stress she's under, whether she's creating lessons or grading papers or whatever she's doing. I see the stress. Two of my kids are in public school, so I see the stress for them. Like, even it snowed the other day. They were remote on Thursday and Friday. And when we got the phone call, their first reaction was not, "Oh, great, snow day." It was, "I don't want to be remote. I want to see my friends." So, like, the learning is taking place. And I'm really, got to be honest, I'm sick and tired of people saying that there's a learning lapse. Like, you don't stop learning. Like, you're just not learning at the moment. You're not learning exactly what's on the curriculum. You're still learning. Like, you just talked about the fact that you have kids coding and quote unquote playing games, but that's still learning. Learning is not just books. Learning is not just sitting there and listening to a lecture, So I know it's hard. I know kids want to be in school. I know teachers want to be in school. That's definitely the sour part. That the long hours just don't stop. The sweet part about this is everything is changing around us. This is fantastic. Like, school is going to change for the better. Like, whether it is the fact that kids can learn more at home if they feel more comfortable. Maybe it's the fact that we can connect differently and be part of more because of Zoom and Google Meet. And we can be where we want to be, even though we can't really be there, if that makes any sense. So I know, like, I can be on 3 Google Meets at once in 3 different classrooms and working with kids while I'm sitting in my office or sitting in somebody else's classroom. So we can do a lot. The tech tools that are being used, I have seen such innovative work from my teachers this year that I'm very excited to see what they're going to bring forward in an actual learning environment where all the kids are there. So the sweet part definitely is the fact that our teachers are going above and beyond to do more for our students. And I hope that doesn't change, because I think they're going to start seeing that they're really making a bigger impact with this new way of teaching. Like, the remote, I know it's difficult. I know it's not fun being virtual. It's not fun having 2 cohorts and kids are moving back and forth. But I think the teaching has become better now. It's become much stronger. People are getting away from lecture and they're actually putting more on the students. And that's what we need to do. We need that student-centered learning.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you 100% there on what you said. And, I've seen just similar situation, like you said. You've got the sweet and the sour, and I have seen teachers that never thought that they would be using tech now, and they're just thriving. I know I mentioned a story, I think it was this past Wednesday, or, in another show, where, teacher, I think she's like 27 or plus year veteran, very low tech. And now when she got introduced to the tech tools, she's now like, hey, this makes things so much easier, that she's like, I can keep on teaching for maybe another 5, 6, 7 years or so. But because she just adapted, she overcame the fear. And one of the nicest things that she said to me, when we transitioned into all this tech and everything, she's like, Alfonso, she goes, not a lot of people teach me things, but you've taught me a lot. And that, I literally brought a tear to my eye, because with her, she's just a staple in our district. She's a wonderful, passionate educator. And I mean, it just really was amazing. And she's doing so great. Like, she called me up every once in a while and she'll be like, hey, check out what I did, or check out what I'm doing. And she'll ask some questions, but she's excited, she's excited. But you do see the some of the sour, I mean, and we can't, walk around that. But I mean, I'm sure that it's happened in districts all across. But I mean, you've had teachers that have just said, you know what, this is it. Like, they just kind of hang it up and that's it. Some mid-year, some at the beginning of the year. And did you see any of that or experience any of that there within your school setting, AJ?
So I'm going to go with two things there. So first of all, that excitement piece, I can't tell you the amount of teachers who are so excited about using this different technology. They've come up to me, and because I'm new in the building, they have said, "Oh my God, AJ, if you had seen me a year ago, I was afraid of technology. I
Mm.
wasn't able to do these things." And it's not me. I'm not saying this is me. This is the people that were there that were putting the technology in their hands and empowering them to allow them to use the technology. But now that the excitement is there, I can build on that excitement. So great, you're comfortable with this. Now let's move on to this. Almost like sampling our teachers so they can figure out, the different kind of technology they can use to change their lessons. So when they have that excitement, I'm going to just push them even further. So I'm going to be the pusher for one time, and I'm going to have them just kind of like take this technology and run with it in a different way and change their lessons, because I want them to continue to be excited, not just use technology one time. On the flip side, yes, I have seen many teachers who are just done, who are just saying to themselves, I don't think they're at the point where they want to quit. I don't think they're at the point where they're ready to retire. I just see people who are just really done with the entire situation, done with the constant pressure of, let me say my wife, for example. I'm not saying she's done, but the last couple of days, she was home with the kids. I was home with the kids. And both of us were just like trying to control these kids. As I'm trying to do observations. She's trying to do her lessons. We're watching the baby. The boys are doing their school. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, could you imagine a normal day like this? And that's just, everybody's remote. Yesterday, she was home by herself. And I was like, how'd the day go? And she's like, well, my lessons were terrible. I'm like, why? She's very hard on herself. And she was saying that, she had to keep the baby away from her brother because he was doing school. The other one was upstairs and he was coming downstairs to do his phys ed. So she wanted to play with him. So she was basically juggling 3 kids while teaching lessons because I wasn't home. We had school. So people in that situation, I feel for, because I think they're really becoming burnt out extremely quickly. I know some districts who are absolutely taking away breaks because they just want the kids to get in school. They'll make it up later on. I think that's really hard for the students and for the teachers. So, I feel for those teachers. I feel for them. And I want them to be able to find that outlet, whatever it is, depending on where you are. But right now it's so hard. There's no change. There's no change in scenery. You go to school for a little bit, you come home, and then you're stuck at home. Like, it's the weekend. Everybody's like, oh, what are you doing your weekend? Like, I'm not doing a thing. Like, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to go one side of the couch. I'm going to go to the other side of the couch. I'm not going anywhere, So I think people are just kind of just tired.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, I can't even imagine that. Like you said, just different home situations. It's very difficult for a lot of people. You've got issues with accessibility. You've got issues, all connectivity devices, all sorts of things that are happening. And of course, it's things that we were never ready for. But slowly, I can only say that things will only get better, and I know they have, and I know everybody's trying their best to do things, and so hopefully, like you said, things will definitely get better soon. But I want to talk about what you were just talking about, because it's really, a lot of it is just your podcast is resonating, and so now going back to that administrative hat, that lens, going from the teacher, and this is something that you know uh, I can relate to, going from to the classroom and moving up to central office. People look at you different, and at one point I experienced this where I moved. There was that move, and then I went down to help, to at a classroom and a school, and one of the first comments that I got was, "Oh, you're one of them now." I was like, wait a minute, I was just here a couple of months ago and we were collaborating on projects, we were working together. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's you. It's like, how was that transition for you? Was it something that you saw, happen to you? Did it occur to you? Or I'm sorry, was there any occurrences of that, you know, once you transitioned?
So you touched on it before that I kind of like surprised you with my announcement. Oh, he's a vice principal now.
Yeah.
And I think I keep that to myself because I've changed a lot of positions throughout my 16 years in education. I've been a classroom teacher. I did some PD stuff. I went back to the classroom. I was a supervisor. Now I'm a vice principal. And throughout the movement, I've always kind of seen myself. I've kind of seen myself as a teacher. I always say educator. I don't like the word administrator because I just feel like administrator, like you just said, it's that negative connotation. It's the dark side. So in the vice principal role, like I'm sitting here and then like I want to be in the classrooms. I don't want to be sitting at my desk doing paperwork. So I try to get in the classrooms as much as possible. So, people definitely look at you differently because they see you come in like, oh my gosh, is this an observation? Is this an evaluation? Like, what are you here for? So I'm like, I'm here to hang out. Like I have a couple of 5th grade teachers that I'm just very comfortable with. I'll just go sit down in their classroom and they don't change their lesson. They just kind of talk to me and treat me like I'm actually a person in the classroom and not an administrator in the classroom. So I've definitely had people look at me and say, okay, AJ's here, time to be an administrator. But no, like I really want to portray myself as an educator. And that's why I kind of keep it to myself. I don't want to be looked at differently. I don't want people to think that when I speak, I'm speaking as the vice principal. I'm speaking as somebody in the field of education who knows, over my 16-year career, what the classroom looked like, what it can look like, what it should look like, and how to help push people into that direction. That's why I got into this role. I did not get into this role so I could, put myself on a pedestal and say I'm higher than you. I didn't put myself here for that. I put myself here because I know I can help students and teachers by the dozens, and that's my goal. So when people look at me like that, I kind of, I hate, I don't know. I don't want to say hate. I shouldn't say that, but that word administrator is so different to me than educator. And I don't know why, but I really I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. It's just that connotation. But you know what, AJ, I'm going to tell you, like my experience is when I had the opportunity now to work there. And again, it's really like all I did was just change buildings, but I agree with you 100%. I am 100% teacher. I was like, yeah, like, kind of like that title sounds like, instructional software specialist. It's like, oh, okay. But I've always been a teacher and my job is to teach people and to teach. And that's what I love. I mean, when I get to share and all of that. So it's just like, hey, I'm still a teacher. I'm just in a different building. But like you said, I get to go and visit and work with other teachers that I get to hang out with and help. And so, but one of the things that I wanted to add to that is when I started working there at central office, I was like, wow, the work that everybody puts in there. I mean, it is nonstop. And I even told them, I was like, guys, we were in a meeting and I think it was my first meeting. And, I'm the new kid on the block. And, so I just kind of opened up and I said, you know what? I just want to let you know something. It's like when I was in the classroom, everybody, and even myself, it's like you look up and you're like, oh, central office. It's like, yeah, it's like you just feel like boom, they're just bringing stuff on you and putting stuff on you and putting stuff on you or things of that sort. But now that I get to be here and I see things through the lens that you guys are seeing things, I get it. I was like, you are working to make sure that we have what we need, to make sure that we have what our students need. And that changed my perspective about, that building, central office. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, these are some of the hardest working people. I mean, I work with content specialists and they are continually just on and working on curriculum nonstop. And I'm like, wow, so it was sometimes it's just that adjustment of seeing things through a different lens. And I think that I love the fact that you still go out, visit those teachers, and you still see, yourself as that lens of a teacher. But like you said, it's the impact now is greater. And that's awesome, dude, that you still have that relationship. You're relatable. You go out there. And I think one of the things is it's relationships, man. Relationships.
That's what it comes down to. And I was talking to my wife about this. She said to me, like, where do you feel like you've worked harder? I was like, what do you mean? So she's like, do you think you work harder as an administrator or as a teacher? I was like, well, I think my days were different. I think when I was a teacher, I worked hard during the day to make sure I'm sorry, let me go back. I worked hard during the day to make sure that my students were in a good environment, but I worked harder at night because I wanted my lessons to be on point when I walked into the school the next day. In this role as an administrator, there's the word again, but as an administrator, I'm working hard during the day so that when I go home at night, I don't have to do anything, because I know when I get to work the next day, whatever I left on my desk, whatever's on the computer, it's going to be there. You know, I don't have to worry about students coming in and having to change a lesson plan last minute. That's not going to happen in my case. Yeah, I might have to change an observation or a meeting might pop up, but my day is like just stacked full of stuff as an administrator, as you just said. But as a teacher, I feel like I was just able to enjoy the day more because I was interacting more with students and working with them. So, we're all working hard in a school. Just how we're working and when we're working, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, man. Totally. And so going back now to your podcast, if you don't mind just sharing, this last episode, and really I encourage you guys, if you haven't yet, I know I popped in the link, but make sure you check out the Reflect Ed podcast and check out this latest episode 9. And it really, really helps you out. AJ just really does a great job at just really pouring himself out, and just some of the things that he's sharing here today are some of the things that he shared on the podcast. But I really want to hit on those things, man. Like you said, that balance, and we were talking about this a little earlier before even the show, and it's something that I've had to learn too as well, because like you said, they ask, it's like, where is it that you work harder, in the classroom or where you're currently at? I said, it feels like I never stopped working, like, in this position, because it's like you need to be on top of your game. You need to be on top of knowing what's out there, seeing what's new, seeing innovative ways of sharing, innovative things of doing, how to train your teachers, creating modules, getting ideas. And, even though it's 8 to 5, I was working, answering emails, till 10 p.m. and so on, because one of the things is I'm very customer service oriented. And that's because of my background in business. It's like, I want to make sure I take care of my customers, but in doing so, I wasn't taking care of myself, like, I mean, answering emails. And I think you hit on a point there. It's like, that email, w- w- you're not going to be able to do anything right now. You're not going to be able to fix that problem. And that email is going to be there in the morning. And in the morning, when everybody is where they need to be, then you can find a solution. But it has taken me about 4 years. Now I'm going on 5 years in my position, 4 years to finally start realizing that, and really taking care of my mental health, and just taking care of self-care myself, not to burn out, because, the demand is there for work and you want to help everybody. But now it's like, wow, like, I need to take care of myself and turn that switch off, that professional switch off, and just do things. So let's talk a little bit about that, AJ. Like, what are some ways that you share, or maybe even help your teachers, things that you've done, as an educator, I'll go to, administrator. What are ways that maybe you're helping or you're sharing with your teachers, if you don't mind sharing with all of us, because I'm sure that we've all heard a lot of things, but maybe coming from you, things might click like it did for me.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, for my district, they don't require lesson plans this year. So they told our teachers, unless you have an observation where you need to have lesson plans, don't do lesson plans. So that was one way they kind of helped them a little bit. For me, I don't, with the email. Last year, I was banging away emails, 11 o'clock at night, sitting in my bed or sitting at the desk, whatever the case may be, banging out emails to my teachers that I feel like, I have to get this information out. But I was like, why am I doing this? Like, what are they going to do at 11 o'clock at night? So this year, coming into this role, I was not going to send any emails after 5 o'clock. If I was going to create an email, I scheduled it in Google that it would go out, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. This way they can do whatever they need to do with it. I feel like by sending an email after hours, it's going to put somebody on alert. It's going to give them anxiety for the rest of the night. And then it's going to stop them from being with their families. So I don't send any emails after 5 o'clock at night. I don't really check my email unless there's an emergency. So it goes to my phone, obviously, and I'll look at it. And if it's not something I need to attend to right then, I'm not going to attend to it. So that's it. I really like my time at night. So I come down after the kids go to bed. I come downstairs. I hit the bike. I'll come over here, start doing some podcast stuff. I'll watch a movie, because I have my whole night ahead of me. So from like 9 to midnight, that's my time, because I don't sleep. So I'll work out. I'll do the work here. I'll get things ready for the next day, or I'll go hang out with my wife, depending on the day. So that's my time. I wake up early. 5 o'clock in the morning is my time. So from 5 to 6, I'll just have my coffee and just be. So that's just me. I don't do anything else. I'll just sit and just be me. But for the mental health and this wellness, I can't tell you, Fonz, how you should do your day. I shouldn't tell you that like you should get up early. That might not be for you. I can't tell you to go work out. Maybe you don't like exercise. So, what I do is what I do because it's worked for me this year. My wife does, works for her. What somebody else that's listening might do works for them. So it's about finding that mix for yourself that'll equal the balance. You can't just say, well, you need balance. Like, what is balance? Like, what's balance? What is balance with 3 kids? Like, I don't even know what balance looks like. So during the day, I can't find balance. Awake, that's my day. Like I can't just put them on the back burner and just hang out on the couch and watch a movie. They're going to be jumping on top of me. So my day is my kids. At night, I'll find my balance that works for me.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just finding that work balance. And like Mel, she says here, be you for 5 to 6 a.m. with coffee. I need to learn how to turn my brain off. And Mel is somebody like, yeah, she is definitely very active and, very, on social media and everything. She's always willing to help. And so, yeah, Mel, like, I know she does tennis. So I know tennis helps. So that'll be good. And Dr. Dan, of course, saying, always go back to the phrase, your emergency is not my urgency. And so it's just been difficult, like for at least, like you said, of that balance. I feel like I'm finally just getting that balance and being able to juggle, you've got work, you've got your home life. And then of course we do what we do here with the podcast. And then on top of that, I'm adding that additional layer of school. It's like, oh my goodness, finding that balance. But, slowly it's like, 8 to 5, and like you said, those emails, it's like, hey, I'll just wait till the next day, and that's it, because it's not good for our health. You're losing sleep. You like you said, you cause that anxiety. And more than anything, the relationship with your family, you want to be there for your kids. I mean, for you, I mean, I can imagine, right now, like you're mentioning, you've got your kids there at home. So it's like you're watching them grow right before your eyes in the middle of going to school, being remote, juggling the administrative work, the emails and all that stuff, but you're watching them there grow right before your eyes and finding that balance. Like you said, your wife is an educator too. So finding that balance of like, hey, you know what? Like, yeah, I know you're working on lessons. Let's find some time. And, I don't know, I don't know. It's just like you said, interesting because not everybody's balance is going to be the same, but it's definitely something that's very key and very important. So that's awesome, man. Um, I don't know, like, let me see anything else that you'd like to share as far as that is concerned. Maybe some insights also, just to, continue sharing a little bit of the wisdom that you shared on that podcast, man. I mean, I know, I mean, I definitely want them to listen to that, but some of those key points, I was just like, wow, it just blew my mind. And well, let's not give it all away, AJ. I just want to know, like, and let's talk about podcasting now. And as that's the way I got to know you, through podcast PD. You're there with Chris, and you're there with Stacy, and that's the first time that I met you and or got to know who you are. So let's talk a little bit about Reflect Ed. What was your inspiration, of creating Reflect Ed podcast?
All right. So first of all, it's all Nessie, right? Like, I'm going to put on him because I called him from day one. He's Mr. Podcast, right? If you know Chris Nessie, you know all the things that he does around podcasting. So he's the one who actually gave the push here to do these things. So years ago, I don't remember the exact number of years. Let's say 4 years, right? It's probably even longer than that. Chris, me, and Stacy were talking on Twitter during a chat and just came out talking about podcasting. And then we started DMing each other about podcasts and the power of podcasts, and that we enjoyed listening to podcasts. And it was really before podcasts became like completely engulfing our world around us. Like, nobody had a podcast then except for Chris. So, Chris is like, let's have a Twitter chat called Podcast PD, where we focus on podcasts. So we did the Twitter chat for a while, and it was pretty cool. It was successful. We would talk behind the scenes as we were chatting with people, and we were putting out questions just like you would for a Twitter chat. And Chris is like, this should turn into a podcast. So lo and behold, it did. We've been doing that successfully. We're on episode 94. And it's been fun to do that. And at the same point, like, I love what we do on Podcast PD, but at the same time, it's the three of us talking. So I don't always share, like, I'm very quiet. Like you said it before, I'm quiet, but I do have something to say. So sometimes, like, I want to do an episode that I know is not going to vibe well with Chris, or I know is not going to vibe well with Stacy, and it's not going to do or have the message that I want to have. So I said to Chris, I was like, look, man, I'm not leaving Podcast PD by any means, but I want to start my own podcast. I think I can do this. I think I have ideas. I think there's people I want to talk to that you guys might not be interested in. So he's like, all right, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. So I started thinking, like, what do I want my podcast to focus on? And for me, one of the biggest things in education is reflection, right? Every day I would finish my lesson and I would reflect on how it went, what I could do better, and things like that. And I was like, reflection. I was like, okay. And then looking at all the different hashtags that it was this ed and that ed. And I was like, what about reflect education? I was like, reflect ed. So boom, I got the name, and it took me a while to get it going. So I was nervous to start because I didn't think I had a lot to say, and I didn't think anyone would listen to what I'm saying. So, I hate to say it, but like, the numbers and looking at numbers kind of is what like stopped me for a while. With Podcast PD, Chris set it up so that we would get like the report for the week and for the month. And I'm like, oh wow, we have a lot of listeners. I'm like, that's not going to translate. I get it, but let's see what it does for me. So after my first episode, I had a couple of numbers. The numbers went up, the numbers went down, the numbers went up, and then now they've been kind of consistent. And I'm like, man, my numbers kind of suck. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. So I was like, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Talking to people, like, just keep going. Like, talking to you, you're telling me that it's good, and I appreciate that. And listening to somebody else's podcast, they were saying, even if one person gets value, then you're doing your job. So I appreciate you, Fonz, for telling me you got value from episode 9. And I appreciate everybody else. I've actually got a lot of, thank you.
Don't quantify your impact, man. Don't quantify your impact.
It's true. So I've got a lot of positive responses from episode 9. I feel good about it. So, that's what kind of like pushed me to go forward. So I'm going to keep going forward. And Reflect Ed is just basically my reflection. I like doing the solo podcast. I try to keep them short, but then I also have some guests on there. I've had a couple of guests. I've had 3 guests so far of the 9 episodes. And, I like to hear their reflection. I like to hear what they do in education and what they think they can do for education. So I got a couple of guests lined up, and more to come. And I'm kind of excited about where it's going to go. I know. I got you. Like, I have a notebook right here, and on the list, it says Reflect Ed guests. There's Fonz. Like, you're there. Don't worry. Don't you worry.
Oh man, big shout out to Amanda Macias. Thank you so much for, just that just wonderful. Don't quantify your impact, Amanda. Thank you so much. Longtime supporter of the show, always on. And then of course, here is my man right there, excellent creator, Life Through Lens. AJ, he's actually the one that created my intros, both intros. So yeah, so shout out to Ismael. Thank you so much. And of course, all our guests that are here. And coming back to what you're saying, finding that inspiration, finding that right time, those conversations. I mean, it was just one of those things also, like, for myself. And guess who I contacted? I was like, Chris Nessie. And the reason that I contacted him is I had already started. And then Bruce Reicher, who was one of the guests on the show, he's like, hey man, you should really talk to Chris Nessie. He's a great guy and everything. And then I reached out and got him on the episode. And, and I'll just throw it out there. Chris's episode is the #1 episode that I have that everybody's listened to, over 100 listens. And then after that is Dr. Dan. Now, coincidentally, they're both on the Education Podcast Network. So I don't know if maybe that's something that that has to deal with it. But all of the guests have been amazing, and like you said, it's just a matter of hearing stories, and that's mainly what I do. And just to give you a little bit of story on your podcast, AJ. I mean, when I first started listening to your podcast, I'm like, man, this guy is really deep. Like in other words, you really get into the education aspect of it, which I lack because I didn't go to college or the college of education to become a teacher. But when I hear you talk and the way that you explain things and the way that you dive deep into them, it really gives me a greater understanding of seeing things through that lens of a person that, I mean, I guess knows the terminology, knows all the verbiage, knows all those words, big words, because they're big words for me because I don't know them. And the way you simplify it, I'm like, wow, like this is really good. This is really deep. And so sometimes I'll be honest with you, and I've talked to other people, and I say, like AJ's podcast, I was like, man, that guy goes deep, like, you know, and I felt that imposter syndrome, like you said, like you felt with numbers. I'm like, my show is just like we just talk and we just, I mean, maybe there's no substance in, but for me, it's just I just want to hear people's stories and what inspires them and what gets them to do the things that they do so that other people can be inspired. So it was a little rough for a while. I think after Nessie's episode, when I started kind of taking this a little bit more serious, I was like, is this really I mean, I don't know. Is this really what I want to do? Is this really what I want to continue doing? But then all of a sudden, just things clicked, and like Amanda says, it's like, hey, don't quantify your impact. Yeah, you see the numbers, you see all that. I'm like, you know what? If one person can get one gem, one nugget of wisdom, one little thing that they can take from them, then it's well worth it. And I'll always go back, and I mentioned him several times, and I know people are probably like, there he goes. But Al Thomas, I'm mentioning him because the quote that he had that he shared with me is something that now is kind of like what I live by is everybody's waiting for you to do that one thing that's going to steer them in a positive way, in a different direction, maybe obviously for the better. And I think like when I hear your podcast, just your voice coming through, it's really, it's great. It's refreshing. It's different. And I'm just being honest with you, man, because I definitely want people to go check out your podcast because what you have to share is something that's great. Your guests have been great. When you did the one on leadership, recently too, with
Woods.
yes, yes. Yeah, with Matt Woods. I mean, those are great podcasts, and you definitely can glean so much from that. And like I said, I'm a big fan, and of course, I'm a fan of what Nessie does as well. Nessie's just refreshingly honest and in your face. Then you've got Tim, who does some great roundtables. That he brings amazing educators on, and so I guess what I want to say is, it's kind of like I used it with Chris. I was like, if you walk down a grocery store and you see the bread aisle, there's all sorts of bread, different packaging, but there's always going to be a customer for it. So, it's just what it is. We do what we do because we're passionate about it, and we want to get, like in myself, I want to get stories out there. I want to get people that inspire me to inspire others. And so that's why you're here, my man, because you're definitely an inspiration. And I'm thankful that we've had the opportunity to connect.
No, I appreciate that, and like you really hit on something there that like we have, as I hit the mic, we have some great people around us. Like I get excited for Saturday mornings when I see your name pop up. I love watching what you do. I think the production is great. The interviews you have are great, and I told you, you're getting people who like I never thought about, I never knew about. So like the people you're interviewing, I'm really invested in that because I don't know their story, and it's new to me, and I like that. And then like just to give a shout out to the other people that like. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I consume a lot of different podcasts, whether it's motivational or educational, but like guys like, Tim Cavey and Dan Kreines and Chris and Josh Stamper and Dan Bauer. Like I have go-to podcasts. And when I listen to those podcasts, I'm like, I want to combine all of these. I need to make that together into my podcast. And that's why I like having like that solo, and I like having the guests, because I really want to share my thoughts in education, because I have a lot of reflection on it. Like, I've been doing it for 16 years and I'm going to keep going. But then also, like you said, I want people to learn from other people, because I don't want to bring in just like the edu celebrities or the authors or this. I want the people who have really impacted me in a way. So I'm with you. Like, that bread aisle is there, and like there's a lot that I kind of go to every time, but then some of them have to take from the top shelf or some from the bottom that we don't really touch on all the time.
Exactly, and it's just all in what your flavor is, and there's definitely something out there for everybody. And I'm just honestly, I'm just thankful that I was able to get you here today. Also, I know it was short notice, but it's something that was already planned.
Oh, yeah.
We just didn't know when.
Right.
But things always work out for the best, man. And today definitely worked out for the best, as
Absolutely.
I got one of my great friends on here sharing his passion, his story from going from classroom educator to now still an educator. Just we'll just as an administrative educator. There you go. And maybe that'll be a new thing, like administrative educator.
I like
I don't know. It's just, I mean, we're always teachers. We're always going to be teachers. We're just
Mhm.
teaching at a different level. And of course, just the title changes. But AJ, thank you so much, man, for being here, for doing what you do, because it's guys like you and everybody else, other podcasters that just really pour their hearts out into what they do, that inspire me and inspire many others to do what we do and to continue to learn. And to me, that's the most important thing. Learning. It's just I never want to stop doing it. And every time I hear a podcast, I learn something new and apply it. And then I try and get those people on so they can explain it better and hear their stories too as well. But thank you so much, AJ, for
Thank you,
taking the time
Fonz.
out of your day, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an honor. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Hey, so let us know, AJ. Tell all our audience members where they can hit you up and they can start following you and find your podcast.
Yeah. So if you want to connect, it's very simple. I keep it simple. AJ Bianco, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just type in AJ Bianco. You'll find me. Check me out every other Sunday on Podcast PD with Chris and Stacy. We do that live at podcastpd.com/live, 8:30 Eastern time. Reflect Ed is a bi-weekly podcast, so I'm trying to get some more out there because I enjoy doing it, and I'm trying to see how many times I can get out there. I've been doing it twice a month, but that could change, as time in the summer comes around. So Reflect Ed is out there, reflectedpodcast.com. And I look forward to connecting with people. That's really what I want. Find me on these social medias and just say hi.
Yeah, and definitely, and reach out. So here's let me see here. Here we go. Reflect Ed podcast. This is AJ's podcast right there. All right. And of course, you can also find it here on the Edu Podcast Network. All right. So you can go ahead and visit edupodcastnetwork.com, and then you can see all of these amazing shows right here. You just click on our shows and you'll be able to see who's on there, and great podcasts that are here. Oh, who's that guy right there? Look at that. Yeah, so go do that, guys. And of course, you can always visit us at myedtech.life, where you can catch all our recent episodes. And guys, please make sure you hit us up right here. You can subscribe, get exclusive content straight to your inbox. And I definitely want to hear from you guys. I want to continue to better what I do. I mean, I know I'm nowhere near perfect, and I'm doing this just because I'm passionate about. But if you guys ever have any suggestions, or just hit us up, give us some feedback, or if you'd ever like to be a guest, go ahead and click here on the contact me and go ahead and shoot us a message. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to get some feedback. And of course, if you are on a Chrome browser, if you hit this little blue microphone, you can even drop us a voice shout out, and we'd love to play your shout outs on our show live. So of course, just visit our site, guys, support. And of course, you see all our amazing episodes. We do have episodes in Spanish as well. So you want to hit up the E-Twins right there. And there's my man, content creation. What's your process? The 3 CCs, definitely. So go check them all out here on myedtech.life. AJ, again, my brother, thank you so much. This was a wonderful hour that I just learned so much. And I know that our audience members too took so much from this and seeing things through a different lens, that educator slash education administrator lens, shift. Thanks, my man. And thanks for sharing your passion, dude. I love it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Awesome, guys. All right, guys. So that's the end of our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you can, please, those of you that are watching us on YouTube, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. That way you can go ahead and and set reminders too to all our awesome shows. We will be having some great shows this coming week. This Wednesday, we have Claudio Zavala. So you don't want to miss out on that show. We're going to be talking about content creation. And of course, just Claudio's passion for putting himself out there. I mean, if you don't follow Claudio yet, make sure that you follow at I am Claudius and check out his stuff. And then, of course, check him out this coming Wednesday. So I'm really excited. And you know what? I can't believe that we're almost making it to 50 episodes. And man, I feel like this is only the beginning. And again, just thank you for being part of this. And AJ, of course, like I always say, anybody that's here with me is part of the PLF. And anytime that you ever want to come back, you have an open invite, my friend, so you can share any new projects, any passion projects, whatever it is that you're going, anything you want to say, you always, always have an open invitation here, my man. All right. All right, guys. So thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. And we'll see you this coming Wednesday. And remember, stay techie, my friends.